In the vast landscape of television history, few shows have captured the essence of dysfunctional, yet endearing family dynamics quite like Mama's Family, premiering in 1983. This spin-off from the legendary sketches of The Carol Burnett Show transported audiences to the fictional town of Raytown, introducing the world to the sharp-tongued matriarch Thelma Harper and her chaotic brood. It was a series that found humor in the mundane and heart in the bickering, becoming a staple of 80s pop culture and a comforting memory for millions. However, when the studio lights dimmed and the laughter of the live audience faded, the actors who brought these colorful characters to life returned to realities far more complex than the scripts they held. Decades have passed since the Harper family first graced our screens, and time has carved unique paths for each member of the cast. Some found greater glory becoming icons of the industry, while others retreated into quiet solitude or faced heart-wrenching private battles. Today, we peel back the curtain to explore the poignant, triumphant, and sometimes tragic true stories of the legends behind Mama's Family. Betty White as Ellen Harper Jackson. In the fictional world of Raytown, Ellen Harper Jackson was the anomaly of the family. A character portrayed as spoiled, haughty, and elitist, she was the daughter who married well and never let her mother or siblings forget it, often clashing with them over her extravagant lifestyle and snobbish attitude. Bringing this character to life was the incomparable Betty White, born on January 17, 1922 in Oak Park, Illinois. Betty was already a seasoned veteran of the industry by the time she stepped into Ellen's high heels at the age of 61. While Ellen was often at odds with the family, Betty's sharp wit and impeccable comedic timing made the character an unforgettable antagonist we loved to hate. Yet Ellen was merely a prelude to the most glamorous chapter of Betty White's career. Following her stint in Raytown, she transitioned seamlessly into the role of Rose Nyland in The Golden Girls, a performance that would cement her status as a global icon. Far from retiring as she aged, Betty seemed to gain momentum, shining in major Hollywood productions like Lake Placid 1999 and The Proposal 2009, and lending her voice to beloved franchises like Toy Story 4. With over 115 film roles to her name, she secured the Guinness World Record for the longest uninterrupted television career by a female entertainer, a tenure spanning more than 8 decades. Her professional success was matched by her financial acumen, with a net worth estimated at $75 million accrued through acting royalties and endorsements. Off-screen, Betty's life was defined by a deep capacity for love, both for humans and animals, while her first 2 marriages were brief and largely forgettable. It was her third marriage to Alan Ludden, the host of Password in 1963, that she considered her great love story. She famously described it as the only meaningful union of her life. They were a golden couple of Hollywood until Ludden's untimely death from stomach cancer in 1981. In the 40 years that followed, Betty never remarried. When asked why, her response was always simple and heartbreakingly poignant. "When you have had the best, who else do you need?" Although she had no biological children, she poured her maternal instincts and considerable fortune into animal welfare, becoming a devoted champion for the Morris Animal Foundation and the Los Angeles Zoo. At 99 years old, Betty White was a marvel of nature, a beacon of optimism, keen intellect, and boundless energy that seemed impervious to time. The world prepared to celebrate her centennial, a milestone that felt inevitable for a woman who had been a constant presence in our lives for nearly a century. Magazines were printed, specials were planned, and fans worldwide were ready to toast to 100 years of Betty. However, fate had a different script. On December 25, 2021, Betty suffered a minor stroke, though she reportedly remained in good spirits 6 days later. On the morning of December 31st, she passed away peacefully in her sleep at her home in Brentwood, Los Angeles. She was just 17 days shy of her 100th birthday. The world lost a legend that day, but her legacy of laughter and kindness remains immortal. Ken Berry as Vinton Vint Harper. Ken Berry, born on November 3, 1933 in Moline, Illinois, was the embodiment of the lovable loser in Mama's Family. He played Vint Harper, the kind-hearted but dim-witted son, torn between his domineering mother Thelma and his flirtatious, lively new wife Naomi. Ken was 50 years old when he took on the role in 1983. With his innate charm, gentle physical comedy, and ability to play the lovable clown, he transformed Vint into an iconic figure of 80s television. Before walking into the Harper household, Ken had already won over America as Sam Jones in Mayberry RFD, representing the quintessential good guy of small-town America. But it was Vint Harper who became his most enduring legacy. Vint was neither a hero nor a great success story. He was a locksmith who lived in his mother's basement. But his genuine flaws and sincere love for his family touched viewers' hearts. Ken Berry brought a lightness to the screen that belied the complexity of his own life. A talented song and dance man at heart, Ken was a throwback to the classic vaudevillians, possessing a grace and movement that he occasionally showcased on the series. Friends and colleagues described him as a consummate professional, but also as an introvert and a perfectionist. Traits that sometimes created a wall between him and the chaotic social world of Hollywood. Behind the on-screen smiles, Ken's personal life was fraught with quiet difficulties and profound tragedy. In 1960, he married actress Jackie Joseph. They were a Hollywood couple that seemed to have it all, but they faced an unimaginable loss early on when their first child died just 6 days after birth. Though they later adopted 2 children, John and Jennifer, the marriage eventually dissolved, ending in 1976 after Mama's Family concluded its run in 1990. Ken largely retired from the glitz of Hollywood. He appeared in occasional cameos, but preferred to focus on theater, where he could indulge his true passions, singing and dancing. He retreated to a quieter existence, finding joy in classic cars, motorcycles, and the outdoors, living with his partner of 24 years, Susie Walsh. Sadly, the shadows of tragedy continued to lengthen over his life. In 2016, Ken suffered the devastating loss of his adopted son John to brain cancer. Blow that struck deep for a man who had already lost a child decades prior. Ken's health began to decline as he battled cardiovascular complications, a struggle he faced with the same quiet dignity he maintained throughout his career. On December 1, 2018, Ken Berry passed away at a Burbank hospital at the age of 85. The tragedies for his family did not end with him just 2 years. Later in 2020, his adopted daughter Jennifer also passed away from natural causes. Ken Berry left behind a legacy of laughter, remembered by fans as a gentle soul who brought joy to millions, even as he carried a heavy heart. Rue McClanahan as Aunt Fran Crowley. Rue McClanahan was born on February 21, 1934 in Holton, Oklahoma. At the age of 49, she stepped into the shoes of Aunt Fran Crowley on Mama's Family. Fran was a stark contrast to the rest of the clan, a neat, edgy, and somewhat uptight local journalist who was perpetually bewildered and frustrated by the lowbrow chaos of the Harper household. The role allowed Rue to showcase a specific brand of sophisticated, neurotic humor, although her time on the show was relatively short, leaving after the second season. Technically, the first in syndication terms, the character was a crucial stepping stone. It was this role that catapulted her toward television immortality, leading directly to her casting as Blanche Devereaux in The Golden Girls. While Fran Crowley was repressed and spinsterish, Rue's next role as the man-obsessed Southern belle Blanche brought her enormous success and Emmy Award, and status as an icon of female independence and sexuality. Professionally, Rue was a powerhouse, amassing a net worth of around $5 million through royalties and acclaimed Broadway roles in productions like The Women and Wicked. However, the search for love that defined her character, Blanche, was a mirror to Rue's own turbulent personal life. She married 6 times, with each union beginning in hope and ending in disappointment. In her candid memoir, My First 5 Husbands and the Ones I Lost, Rue admitted that she spent her life looking for someone who could understand and tolerate her inner conflicts. Her first husband, Tom Bish, left her just a year after the birth of her son Mark, forcing Rue to raise him as a single mother while scraping by in the theater world. Subsequent marriages to directors and businessmen were short-lived casualties of her fierce independence and demanding career. She described herself as a control freak who was nonetheless tender in love, a duality that made lasting relationships difficult. Rue was also a survivor. In 1997, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. Through intensive treatment and sheer willpower, she sent the cancer into remission, becoming an advocate for cancer awareness. But her health battles were not over. In 2009, she underwent major heart surgery, a procedure that left her fragile. Despite her fighting spirit and the best medical care, her body eventually gave out. On June 3, 2010, Rue McClanahan suffered a massive cerebral hemorrhage and passed away at the age of 76. It was a sudden, painful loss for the entertainment world. She left behind a legacy of brilliant performances and a life lived unapologetically on her own terms, forever remembered as the golden girl with the biggest heart. Earl Boen as Pastor Lloyd Meacham. Earl Boen was born on August 8, 1941 in New York City. At the age of 42, he donned the clerical collar to play Pastor Lloyd Meacham in Mama's Family as. The spiritual leader of Raytown, Pastor Meacham was calm, wise, and frequently found himself acting as a reluctant mediator in the Harper family's endless petty disputes. Bowen's performance was understated and dry, providing a perfect foil to the high-energy hysterics of the Harpers. This role, though supporting, left an indelible mark due to Bowen's subtle delivery and commanding voice. That voice would become his greatest asset. Beyond the camera, Earl Boen became a legend in the world of voice acting. He gave life to iconic characters, such as the ghost pirate LeChuck in the Monkey Island series, and King Tyrannus Menethil II in World of Warcraft. His chilling delivery of the line, "No, King rules forever. My son," remains one of the most memorable moments in gaming history. However, the richness of his professional life contrasted sharply with the heartbreak he endured personally. In 1970, he married actress Carol Keane, a woman he frequently referred to as the only light in his life. They were inseparable, a couple who decided that they were enough for each other, opting not to have children. Tragedy struck in 2001 when Carol died of ovarian cancer at the age of 58. Her sudden death shattered. Earl friends reported that he withdrew from public life, rarely giving interviews and becoming unusually quiet. He found solace in his voice, a medium where he didn't have to force a smile for a camera. In the loneliness that followed, he eventually found a new companion, remarrying continuously and moving to Hawaii in 2008. He lived there so discreetly that few fans even knew of his second marriage or his retirement. In the fall of 2022, the final chapter of his life began to close. Earl was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. According to his family, having lived a full life and perhaps ready to reunite with those he had lost, he declined chemotherapy. He chose instead to let nature take its course under the Hawaiian sky. Earl Boen passed away on January 5, 2023 at the age of 81. He died peacefully, leaving behind a legacy that spanned from the pulpits of sitcoms to the digital thrones of video games, remembered as a man of great talent and profound depth. Barney Martin as Billy Field. Barney Martin was born in the gritty streets of New York City on March 3, 1923. At the age of 65, he brought his warmth to Mama's Family in the role of Billy Field, a cheerful older gentleman who served as a brief romantic interest and a source of levity amidst the Harper family drama, while his time in Raytown was limited. Barney Martin was a character actor of immense depth, often playing father figures or authority types with a twinkle in his eye. He is perhaps best known to the wider world as Morty Seinfeld, the father of Jerry Seinfeld, a role that made him a pop culture fixture in the 90s. But behind the on-screen humor and the jolly demeanor was a life shaped by the heavy burden of responsibility and the darkness of the real world. Before he ever stepped in front of a camera, Barney spent 20 years as a police officer with the NYPD, serving from the post-war era through the rising crime waves of the mid-20th century. He witnessed violence, loss, and tragedy firsthand. He survived several near-death experiences in the line of duty. In his later years, Martin candidly admitted that he suffered from insomnia and nightmares about the crime scenes he had witnessed. echoes of what we would now recognize as PTSD. Acting was not originally a dream of fame for Barney. It was a lifeline. It was a way to escape the tormenting memories of the streets, as he once poignantly said, "I don't want to die without trying to live for myself." He used performance as a therapy, channeling his energy into making people laugh, rather than witnessing their pain. Despite his success, he remained a humble family man. He was devoted to his wife, Catherine Martin, whom he married in the 1940s and stayed with until the end. He often turned down lucrative roles that would keep him away from home for too long, always placing family above fame. However, the physical toll of his early life and habits caught up with him. A heavy smoker, a habit picked up to cope with the stress of police work. His health began to fail in his retirement years. After retiring from acting in the early 1990s, he was diagnosed with bladder cancer. On March 21, 2005, Barney Martin passed away at the age of 82, surrounded by the loved ones he had cherished so dearly. His net worth was modest, estimated around $1 million, but his impact was immeasurable. He was a man who walked through the darkness of the real world to bring light to the fictional one. Richard Dawson as himself. Richard Dawson, born on November 20, 1932 in Gosport, England, was a figure of immense charisma. At age 51, he guest-starred in Mama's Family, playing a fictionalized version of himself. In the episode, the Harper family competes on Family Feud, the show Dawson hosted in real life. On screen, he was the epitome of the charming, witty, and kiss-loving host who defined television's golden age of game. Shows his ability to connect with people. His quick banter and his roguish smile made him a superstar. However, behind the radiant stage persona, Dawson experienced significant pain and personal turmoil. He first rose to fame as Newkirk in Hogan's Heroes, but his personal life was often tabloid fodder. His first marriage to the British bombshell, Diana Dors, was volatile. They were dubbed the King and Queen of England in Hollywood, but the relationship ended bitterly with accusations of infidelity on both sides. After 8 years, they separated, leaving Dawson to fight a lengthy legal battle for custody of their 2 sons, a rarity for fathers at the time. He raised them alone while juggling a demanding career. In 1981, the set of Family Feud became the backdrop for his own love story. He met Gretchen Johnson, a contestant on the show, despite a 20-year age gap. That sparked public criticism. Dawson found the lasting happiness that had eluded him. They married in 1991 and had a daughter, giving Dawson a second chance at fatherhood and domestic bliss. In his later years, he largely retreated from public life, turning down opportunities to return to the spotlight. He lived quietly in Beverly Hills, focusing on his family and making up for lost time. Yet old habits cast long shadows. Dawson was a heavy smoker. For decades, he was known to smoke nearly 4 packs a day at his peak. Although he tried to quit in the 1990s, the damage to his body had been done. In early 2012, he was diagnosed with esophageal cancer. Just a few months after the diagnosis, on June 2, 2012, Richard Dawson passed away at the age of 79 in Los Angeles. The man who had kissed thousands of women for luck on television died, holding the hand of the one woman he loved most, leaving fans worldwide mourning the loss of a true original. Kathleen Freeman as Big Joan McCall. Kathleen Freeman, born on February 17, 1923 in Chicago, Illinois, was a force of nature. At age 64, she stormed into an episode of Mama's Family as Big Joan. McCall, a loud, vibrant woman who was unafraid of conflict. Though her appearance was brief, Freeman's performance was a masterclass in character acting. With her distinctive face and booming voice, she was one of the most recognizable characters. Actresses in Hollywood history appearing in everything from Singin' in the Rain to the Blues Brothers. Behind the brassy, loud characters she played, Kathleen Freeman lived a life of profound privacy. She never married and had no children. In an era where Hollywood forced many to hide their true selves, Kathleen guarded her personal life fiercely. Her obituary mentioned a longtime friend, Helen Ramsey, a fellow classmate from UCLA, who was her companion for decades. This relationship was the quiet center of her world, hidden away from the prying eyes of an industry not yet ready to accept it. Kathleen was a working actor in the truest sense. Despite over 200 credits, she lived modestly in a small apartment in Los Angeles, eschewing the mansions and luxury of her peers. She devoted herself to the craft, teaching acting to local students and living for the stage. In her final years, she finally achieved a level of artistic recognition that had long been overdue. She was cast as the piano player, Jeanette, in the Broadway musical The Full Monty, a role that earned her a Tony Award nomination and a Theatre World Award. She was in her late 70s, finally basking in the glow of critical acclaim. However, the curtain fell too soon. Just 5 days after her final performance on Broadway, while the applause was still ringing in her ears, she collapsed. A diagnosis of terminal lung cancer was revealed, and the disease sapped her strength with terrifying speed. On August 23, 2001, Kathleen Freeman passed away in New York City at the age of 78. She died before she could fully enjoy the award season. She had earned a trooper who performed until her very last breath. Anne Haney as Alberta Meacham. Anne Haney, born on March 4, 1934 in Memphis, Tennessee, brought a formidable presence to Mama's family as Alberta Meacham. Appearing at the age of 52, she played the strict, no-nonsense wife of the pastor, a woman who maintained order and discipline and refused to let the chaos of the Harper family overwhelm her dignity. Viewers delighted in the contrast between her stern, buttoned-up appearance and the absurdity of the situations she was thrust into. This role, while comedic, reflected the resilience and strength that defined Anne Haney's real life. Anne was not a lifelong seeker of Hollywood fame. She began her adult life following a traditional path after graduating from the University of North Carolina. She married John Haney, a public television executive. They built a stable, happy life in the South, raising a daughter. However, the foundation of her world crumbled on April 9, 1980, when John died suddenly after a long illness. Anne was 46 years old. In the span of a few months, she lost her husband. Her daughter left for college. Her dog got mange, and her housekeeper quit. Facing an empty nest and a broken heart, she made a radical choice, as she later joked. "So I came to Hollywood." Beneath the humor was a brave plunge into the unknown. She sought acting roles not merely for passion, but because she needed something to hold on to, a new identity to survive. The grief. Hollywood is rarely kind to women starting over in middle age yet. Anne persevered. She won over audiences with small but impactful roles, eventually finding immense success as the social worker, Mrs. Sellner in Mrs. Doubtfire, 1993, and as the secretary Greta in Liar Liar, 1997. She brought a human warmth to bureaucratic characters, amassing a modest fortune and financial stability through her hard work. In 2000, after a guest appearance on the drama ER, Anne began to feel unwell. The resilience that had carried her through widowhood and a late career bloom could not hold back the physical decline. Her health deteriorated rapidly over the following year. On May 26, 2001, Anne Haney passed away from heart failure at the age of 67. She died in the home she had lived in for 20 years, a woman who had rebuilt her life from the ashes of grief and found a way to make the world laugh along the way. Harvey Korman as Alistair Quince and Ed Higgins. Harvey Korman, born on February 15, 1927 in Chicago, Illinois, was a comedic genius whose presence elevated every scene he was in. At the age of 56, he captivated Mama's family viewers with two distinct roles. Alistair Quince, the satirical, pretentiously intellectual narrator of the show's early episodes, and Ed Higgins, Eunice's husband. As Quince, he parodied the serious hosts of Masterpiece Theater, showcasing his intelligence and deadpan delivery. As Ed Higgins, he played the long-suffering spouse, a role he had perfected during the family sketches on The Carol Burnett Show. Harvey was widely considered one of the greatest second bananas in comedy history, a master of supporting roles who could steal the show without overshadowing the star. Yet behind the raucous laughter he elicited was a man plagued by private struggles and deep-seated insecurities. Friends noted that Harvey carried the stress of his work home with him. He was a perfectionist, easily agitated and extremely serious in his private life, a stark contrast to his goofy on-screen persona. He often felt a sense of isolation, which deepened after his first marriage to Donna Ehlert ended in divorce in 1977 after 17 years. His departure from Mama's Family was mired in behind-the-scenes tension. Many in the industry pointed to the tumultuous divorce between his close friend, Carol Burnett, and the show's producer, Joe Hamilton, as the catalyst. Harvey felt trapped in the middle of their conflict and feeling the atmosphere had become unbearable, decided to leave the project he had helped build. It was a devastating blow, as he had also directed over 30 episodes. He found some personal peace when he married Deborah Fritz in 1982. But the emotional burdens of his past never fully vanished. Even while touring with his comedy partner Tim Conway, drawing huge laughs, Harvey would often retreat backstage into silence and melancholy once the lights went down. In his later years, his health deteriorated rapidly. The years of stress and the wear of a life in show business took their toll. In late 2007, Harvey was hospitalized with a ruptured abdominal aortic aneurysm. It was a grave condition, and he underwent multiple surgeries in a desperate bid for survival. Despite the best efforts of doctors, he never fully recovered. Harvey Korman passed away on May 29, 2008 at UCLA Medical Center at the age of 81. He left behind a body of work, from Blazing Saddles to The Carol Burnett Show, that continues to define American comedy, even as the man behind the laughter remains a complex, somewhat tragic figure. Imogene Coca as Gert Corey, born on November 18, 1908. Imogen Coca was a comedy legend by the time she appeared on Mama's Family at the age of 75. She played Gert Corey, a character who could make audiences laugh until they cried with her eccentricities. Imogen was a pioneer, having paved the way for women in comedy. Alongside Sid Caesar in the 1950s, her face was made of rubber, capable of contorting into expressions that defined a generation of humor. But behind the clown's mask lay a life marked by quiet loss, physical pain, and fading memories. Imogen's life was punctuated by tragedy. In 1955, her first husband, composer Bob Burton, died suddenly just a month after she had lost her mother. Devastated, she retreated into herself. She eventually found love again with actor King Donovan, marrying him in 1960 and staying with him until his death in 1987. Outlived 2 husbands and had no children, leaving her final years lonely, populated only by colleagues and a few friends. Physically, she suffered greatly. In 1973, a horrific car accident shattered her cheekbone and severely damaged her right eye. Though surgery reconstructed her face, she lost the sight in that eye. For the rest of her life, she often masked the injury, a painful irony for a woman whose face was her instrument. Despite this, she staged a bold comeback on Broadway at age 70, refusing to let disability stop her. In the final, cruelest twist of her life, Imogene began to struggle with Alzheimer's disease. The mind that had memorized intricate scripts and timing began to fail. She continued to work as long as she could, even earning an Emmy nomination for a guest spot on Moonlighting. But eventually she would get lost on sets and forget the names of co-stars. She spent her last days in a small house in Westport, Connecticut, sitting by a window, staring out at a world she no longer recognized. Imogene Coca passed away on June 2, 2001 at the age of 92. The woman who had defined comedy for an era died in silence, a poignant end to a life that had given so much noise and joy to the world.